So before we get on with today's show, Ben, we have a book coming up next year.
A book? A Twin Peaks Unwrapped book?
Yes, we do. And you can pre-order that book right now by going to bluerosemag.com.
And for our listeners, if you use the promo code Kyle, you'll get $5 off. And we have this other thing that we're going to do just for pre-orders where you will get a special bonus podcast that will come out later that will have Kyle MacLachlan, a sample of our interview with him and other interviews we've done.
But the caveat on that, Ben, is we have to first hit 200 pre-orders. So we have our 200th episode. We announced this amazing thing. And now we would like 200 pre-orders, and we will release the special podcast to all the people who pre-ordered.
And the thing is, what will be in this special podcast will not be made available anywhere else. The big thing about this is we're self-publishing this. So I think a lot of people think we're going to be making millions of dollars off of this. It really is going to cost us to self-publish this. And those pre-orders are going to help us be able to put this out to the world.
Yeah, we thank everybody who will pre-order and everybody who has pre-ordered. All links are in the show notes, including that special code to get your $5 off. Kyle, go to bluerosemag.com today. Welcome to Season 1 Madness. I'm your host, Bryon Kozaczka, and today we'll be crowning the best Twin Peaks Season 1 episode of all time, according to us. I've explained the rules to our panel before recording, but for our viewers at home, here is how it will work. We have all 8 episodes of Season 1 laid out in an 8-team single elimination bracket. Using IMDb's rating system, we have put the lowest rated against the highest rated, going down the line. First episode to get 3 votes moves on until we determine the best episode of Twin Peaks Season 1 ever, according to us. We will have a panel of 4 experts this time around. If you remember the first time, we only had 3. We're upping the game. If we do have a tie, I will be the tiebreaker, but I believe we will not have one of those. I would be very surprised, shocked if we did. So, on to our panelists. First on our panel is Francine the Lucid Dream. She could be found with Lord Schaefer and all the rest of the women of the Pink Room, the David Lynch burlesque around the New York area. And she can also be heard during our community rewatch playing such characters as Nadine Hurley, Norma Jennings, and Catherine Martell. Welcome, Francine.
Hi, thanks for having me.
And our second panelist is the godfather of Twin Peaks himself, John Thorne. John's work can be found on The Essential Wrapped in Plastic at Pathways to Twin Peaks, and currently working on the Blue Rose magazine with our good old buddy Scott Ryan. Subscribe today. Welcome, John.
Hey, thanks for having me.
And our third panelist is Mr. Lost in the Movies himself, Mr. Joel Bacco. You can sign up for his Patreon and check out his blog, Lost in the Movies, currently covering the Veronica Mars. Welcome back, Joel.
Thanks. It's great to be here. This is my favorite Twin Peaks activity now.
And our fourth and final panelist, he can be heard right here on Twin Peaks Unwrapped, my co-host with the mostest, Mr. Ben Durant. Welcome, Ben, to your own show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's move on to the madness. We have our first round. Our first round, we have Twin Peaks Season 1, Episode 7, coming in with a 9.1 rating. Ben Horn's plans are finally realized. with unforeseen consequences, and Cooper is shot and left on the floor for the big cliffhanger. And that episode is against season 1, episode 4, was an 8.3 rating. And that episode had Cooper and Truman track down the one-armed man, some strange new evidence. Norma goes to a parole board hearing for her husband. Audrey begins her own investigation to Laura's death. We're going to go with Francine.
Oh boy, me first.
You are first.
I just want to say, first of all, I'm so happy you guys asked me to be back on the podcast. I'm so pissed at you for having me on this one. How this is like season 1 Twin Peaks is basically a perfect season
it's
of
a tough
TV.
one.
So, and it obviously shaped me in many ways. So yeah, I hate that I have to do this because I think they're all wonderful. But I feel, again, this is tough, but I feel like that last episode, it is just jam-packed with so much stuff happening, and it was worth it to have all that happen just for the first episode in season 2 when Coop wakes up in the hospital and has everything played back to him that what happened after that summer off from TV.
Yeah.
Just for that joke that they got to tell him. So this is what happened. So-and-so died, smoke inhalation, blah, 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 like everything, So just the memory of that makes the cliffhanger the important one for me. Although episode 4 is great. It's like a solid, push through with a lot of wonderful, weird stuff. So yeah, I'm gonna have to go with 7.
Episode 7. All right, Mr. John Thorne, we're going to you next.
Well, I'm going to pick episode 4.
Whoa.
Episode 7. And I have a couple of reasons why. I agree with Francine because to choose some of these episodes over other episodes is really tough. Because the whole season 1 is almost perfect. So each one is sort of a chapter in, this great initial part of the story. I don't have anything against episode 7, but for episode 4 was directed by Tim Hunter, who I think is probably the second best director on the entire Twin Peaks series. And there's just a lot of little things about episode 4 that I like. A lot of little moments. There's the scene where they raid Jacques' apartment at the very end, but there's this bizarre tennis match going on just over on the side. They show it for about 2 seconds, but it's a curious little thing. And then there's the visit to the Lydecker Clinic and the llama coming up to Cooper and things like that just stand out for me. They're little tiny things I really like. So I'm picking episode 4.
All right, John. Wow. All right, we're going to Joel Bacco.
So episode 7 versus episode 4. Episode 7, you've got Mark Frost directing, and I think it's really interesting. It's almost like a Hill Street Blues episode. There's no supernatural, heavy on the crime stuff and the town melodrama, not very woodsy. It's an interesting take on Twin Peaks, but I think episode 4, in a way, feels more Peaksian to me. I love the fact that we're seeing the investigations get going. You're not having, the first 3 episodes leading up to the funeral. I think we're kind of stuck in place. Everyone's digesting Laura's death. Now you see Cooper, you see Audrey, you see James, Donna, and Maddie all going in their own directions. And you get all these cool one-off locations like Lydecker's Clinic and Jacques' apartment. And you even get to see a little bit of the high school for the last time in a ton of episodes. So I just have a lot of affection for this episode. For a long time, it was my favorite of season 1. I don't know if I'd go that far anymore, but I would definitely go with episode 4. I think underrated gem.
Wow. Thank you, Joel. Now, Ben, this is 1 to 2. This is pretty interesting.
This could become a tiebreaker if I go with 7.
You could do it.
Yeah.
Yes. So, Ben, what is your thoughts on this one?
I think
Oh boy.
it's episode 4. Tim Hunter.
Wow.
The pacing of Tim Hunter is just incredible. I mean, you guys have already kind of mentioned it, but we also have the one-armed man that they get kind of break down the door of one-armed man's motel. And that scene there, and that takes them off to the veterinarian, and we talked about the llama scene, that the llama and Cooper look at each other, and it's just a great paced episode. It really is the best.
Wow. That was a good round, guys.
That was hard, though, because it is Mark Frost, and Mark Frost, I think it's the only one he directed.
Yes.
It's the only one he directed, and he did a great job, and I love the whole Jacoby is having a heart attack, and you go into his eye, and you see the casino, and there's some beautiful visuals, but you can't beat Tim Hunter.
I'm just going to say, I don't think I've ever seen an episode deliver cliffhangers better than that last episode of season 1 of Twin Peaks. I mean, it was just like one cliffhanger after another.
Right.
Just boom, boom, boom. And Frost has said he fully intended to do that. Not only did he want to ramp up all the tension, but he also was somewhat subversively kind of mocking the soap opera genre by just piling, cliffhanger after cliffhanger on. So it is hard not to choose that one, but yeah. That's the way it is, I guess.
And John, there had been rumors that there were two endings. Like I think there was the whole Donahue, and I thought there was rumors that if we don't get picked up, we have one ending, and then if we do get picked up, there's the big cliffhangers. But it really does seem like maybe it was always just one cliffhanger.
Yeah, Mark Frost was on the Phil Donahue show just before episode 7 aired.
We are joined by Mark Frost, who just happens to be the executive producer, creator, and writer, as well as the director of Twin Peaks. Hey. Well, are we picked up or what? Tell us, Mark.
Well, I just got a phone call. We've been picked up for the fall.
Well, that's good. Well,
that's the first they've heard of it.
It's nice to be working.
And he was told, or he may have known, but the news broke on that Donahue show that this show had been picked up for a second season. And he said, he must have known in advance of that, he said they are something to the effect of they're frantically working on it right now to kind of keep it open. And I think that was just a little tease from Mark Frost. I think the episode was done, long done, the way it was going to be.
Right.
I suppose maybe they were going to throw a title card up at the end or something, and I don't know. Honestly, don't know if they had been canceled, whether or not they would have tried to closed it somehow. But I don't know.
What were you going to say, Francine?
Oh, I was just going to say, after listening to everyone, even John, the first thing you said, first of all, I should say that I do not have the encyclopedic knowledge that Schaefer the Dark Lord, the Pink Room's main host, does. So when you, episode 4 is not as memorable to me as the finale, but as soon as he said llama, I was like, the llama. Honestly, I had a llama lady in my hometown, and that one moment was just, it's maybe my favorite moment in all of Twin Peaks. That may have swayed me, but I'll stick with my original answer though.
Yeah, for what it's worth, Francine, I would have picked that episode 7 as well because
you should have been on the panel.
No,
it's going to happen again, Joel. Because I'm on the panel, it's going to get.
I'm just saying. That's what I would pick. But we must move on. We have season 1, episode 2 with a 9.0 rating. Dale demonstrates odd techniques from the sheriff's department, the rock throwing. We see the Red Room, Audrey's dance, and Donna and James plan to solve Laura's murder. Up against season 1, episode 3 with an 8.4 rating. The people of Twin Peaks gather for Laura's funeral. A fantastic scene. Agent Cooper interprets his dream about the killer. Truman reveals to Cooper the secret of the Bookhouse Boys. Both these episodes have amazing things in them. All right, we're going to go with Ben first on this one.
I knew you were going to go to me first. I knew it. This is a really hard one because they're really both really good episodes. And I think about episode 3, you have Harvey Payton who wrote this script. He was nominated for an Emmy for writing in this episode. It's such a good, the whole funeral scene is so good. But episode 2 is David Lynch. And it's the Red Room. I mean, it's just jaw-dropping, incredible, and I just love the whole pace of David Lynch. I love it starting off with the horns eating, and they're not talking for a while, and it's just so good. You can't beat David Lynch for me. So it's got to be episode 2.
Episode 2 gets it from Ben, and we're moving. Joel Bacco, you're next on the docket.
This is not a hard one for me. Episode 2 is, I think, the quintessence, even more than the pilot, of Twin Peaks. It's the moment where everything comes together and just hits this kind of peak perfection. And I think, Lynch always talks about, he wishes that they hadn't solved the mystery of Laura, and it just kept going and going. And, that's sort of a questionable judgment, I think. But this is kind of, I think, what it would have looked like at its best had that happened. And, the Red Room sequence, you can't get more iconic than that. I like episode 3 all right. It's never honestly been one of my favorite of season 1, I mean. But for me, this has always been way up there, just in general in the series as a whole. I mean, I think if you were to say to somebody, watch one episode of Twin Peaks, this would be the episode you'd show them. No doubt in my mind.
Very true, Joel. All right, we're going on to John Thorne. John.
Wow, this is so hard. Obviously, I love episode 3 and the funeral and Harley Peyton, but it's no contest. It's episode 2. I think the moment of Dale Cooper's dream is probably the most memorable moment I've ever had watching TV. Save maybe for episode 8 of season 3, but that's a whole different thing.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for episode 2, I never would have devoted myself to Twin Peaks. There just wouldn't have been Wrapped in Plastic and all that other stuff. It's just episode 2.
And Francine, we know it won, but what was your pick there?
What am I supposed to say? It's really pleasing to see all these major characters standing in the same, graveyard together. But maybe if Bobby had actually kicked James's ass, then I would vote for 3. But we did not get to see that, sadly. Episode 2 is iconic, like you said. Everything in that, the rock throwing is hilarious and also dark, and it just shows the wonderful twist of humor and really dark stuff that goes through all of David Lynch's work. The Red Room, of course, the dream sequence, Audrey's dance, and if I was trying to convince someone to watch Twin Peaks, obviously I'd say start with the pilot, but I would say please just get through at least episode 2.
Yeah.
Growing up, I called episode 3, but yeah, watch that because this is the episode that I believe changed television forever.
I've got good news. That the mule is going to come back in style. She's my cousin, but doesn't she look almost exactly like Laura Palmer?
But it is Laura Palmer. Are you Laura Palmer?
I feel like I know sometimes my arms bend back. She's filled with secrets.
All right, we're moving on. We're moving on up. We're going up against, this is an interesting one, Season 1, the pilot episode, which has an 8.9 rating. Laura Palmer found dead wrapped in plastic. Dale Cooper comes to the town of Twin Peaks. I don't need to say more. Season 1, Episode 1, with an 8.4 rating. Cooper makes a connection with Audrey Horne and interrogates James. Ed reveals his beer had probably been drugged at the Roadhouse after the big fight. And Mrs. Palmer has a terrible vision. And we're going to start off with John Thorne on this one.
Another tough one. Of course, it's the pilot.
Yeah.
I mean, hands down, it's the pilot. We could say this about episode 1. It is co-written by Mark Frost and David Lynch, so it's the only other episode that really shares that with the pilot. Well, I mean, I don't know whether to talk about the pilot now or talk about the pilot later, because I think I'll have an opportunity to talk about it.
You probably will. It's up to you. You can save it if you like. It's up to you.
We'll say okay, it's the pilot.
All right.
What if we all vote against the pilot, though?
Oh, boy. Then John I'll let him come back around.
Yeah, come back around, yeah.
Yeah, if you all vote against him, just to be jerks. Next on the docket is Joel Bacco. Joel.
The episode 1 actually was my pilot, because when I first watched the series, the pilot was not on DVD, so Netflix sent me the first disc, and I popped it in, and I was like, what is this show? Like, what? There's somebody's already dead? Like, they're just starting off with a thing? Like, I don't know. I don't know if the show's for me. And then the scene with Bob behind the couch popped up, and that was the first thing to kind of hook me. But, of course, I eventually saw the pilot, and like John said, I think we'll have more time to talk about that later. I'll just say for episode 1, I go up and down on it. Sometimes I really like it. Sometimes it's the weakest episode of season 1 to me. But I think it keeps its head down. It does its job well. It turns Twin Peaks into a TV show, not just sort of this one-off TV event. Like, it shows how it can go forward as a week-to-week TV show. And I think it's very interesting for that. But there's really no contest. Definitely the pilot.
Cool. Thank you, Joel. Well, we're moving on to Francine.
I'm gonna have to say the pilot. I agree with what you just said about this, like becoming like feeling like a TV show and just like it's like moving more. But there, I mean, again, the same thing with episode 2. The pilot's just so iconic. Like, those, for me, are like the 2 of the most important episodes that you would have to watch to like at least get a basic understanding of what Twin Peaks is all about. So yeah, pilot.
So the pilot moves on because of Francine. But Ben, what would have been your pick if you had your choice?
I would pick Lost Highway. No, I mean, yes, it would be the pilot. But I'll say with episode 1, that was directed by Dwayne Dunham, who is the editor of the pilot. So it was kind of nice that you had somebody who was very familiar with the pilot actually directing the next episode. And I thought he did a great job. I love that scene where Cooper's hanging upside down and you kind of pan his room, and I think that was a cool shot.
It is a great scene.
But the pilot, we're going to talk more about it, but that pilot is just so incredible, and it really is just a great, it's its own movie, which is kind of what David Lynch has always said. It's kind of like a movie.
Yeah.
And I'm always impressed that it's taken a half hour before we even see Cooper. We kind of get to know the town, and it's just a great show.
Coming Sunday, April 8th.
She's dead. Wrapped in plastic.
11:30 a.m., February 24th. Entering the town of Twin Peaks.
The Los Angeles Times says Twin Peaks is certainly like nothing else on television.
As W.C. Fields would say, I'd rather be here than Philadelphia.
The Washington Post calls it unprecedented. This you gotta see.
Bobby, did you kill Laura Palmer?
Sunday, April 8th, from David Lynch, Twin Peaks.
So this is the last round of round 1. We're going to go season 1, episode 5 with an 8.6 rating. The boys meet the log lady in the cabin in the woods. Fantastic scene. Audrey gets a job at Horn's department store. Shelley shoots Leo. Hank gets out of prison. Cooper finds Audrey naked in his bed at the very end of the episode.
All right.
Up against season 1, episode 6 with an 8.6 rating. The Bookhouse Boys visits One-Eyed Jacks across the border in Canada to find Jacques Renault. Maddie pretends to be Laura, and Leo wants to kill Waldo. So, we're going to start off with Joel Bacco.
This is a really interesting juxtaposition, not just because it's 2 back-to-back episodes, but because I think these are my favorite, at this point, my favorite non-Lynch episodes of season 1. And I think they're kind of, they overlap a little bit, but they kind of have distinct flavors to me. And I'll just say a little bit about episode 5 first, because I'm going to go to episode 6. I think that, to me, is the one where, even more than episode 7 in a way, because that's like I said, it's so unusually peaksy. And episode 5, I think, is the one where I really start to tease out some things Mark Frost brought to the show on his own, because he wrote that script as a solo script. And it's his first one where Lynch isn't co-writing. And I think you see a different Cooper in that. to a certain extent. Like, he gets a little grouchier, he's more down to earth, he's more kind of human in a weird way. Lynch's is very, like, zany and zen-like. And I love that juxtaposition, and I really love the whole sequence where they go into the woods, they see the log cabins of both the log lady and Jock, and it's one of the most ethereal sequences in the series. And I think I'd even go a little further back when Jacoby is questioning Bobby about Laura. This episode, to me, feels like one where we get the closest to starting to think about who Laura was as a person, what she experienced. And I love kind of butting up Jock's cabin against how it is in the film and how it is in this, where we're seeing the aftermath. And to me, between those two sequences in Fire Walk with Me and this, you kind of have Twin Peaks. Now, that said, I'm going to go with episode 6, and I'll explain more why later. I won't do that now, but that's actually my favorite non-Lynch episode of the entire series. I love it, and I'll save that explanation for later.
All right. If you're confident enough that it will move on, Francine, you were.
Good point. Uh-oh.
Well, if it gets knocked off, I promise you, I'll let you say it.
I made too good of a case for episode 5.
You made a really strong case for episode 5. Francine, you're next in the docket. What do you pick?
This is another tough one. I realized that upon repeat viewings of season 1 that episode 5 is the episode that I always I sort of forget about, because it's kind of the opposite of the it feels like the opposite of the finale, the cliffhanger, because there's just a lot of really beautiful, someone used the word ethereal, things happening, the walk in the woods, these rugged men in the woods. And I think part of what I like about it is that you start seeing the town of Twin Peaks, or at least the natural elements of it, become one of the characters.
Yep.
In just them walking through the woods, when they meet the log lady. Up until this point, I think Cooper feels very much in charge, and all of a sudden he's not in charge, she's in charge, because she knows so much more than he does at this point in time. And, just kind of Cooper, stepping back a little bit and having to be guided by her and the Bookhouse Boys and learning their rules and their rules of the woods and the log lady, I thought was wonderful. It's one of those episodes that I just don't. I'm like, wait, what happened in that? Oh yeah, it's that episode. It's a wonderful, beautiful episode. It feels very slow moving, but it's just like a painting. It's beautiful. And then it ends with that power punch of Coop coming back and finding Audrey in his bed, which was really, I don't know if you can get away with it today, but pretty sexy at the time.
Yeah.
and exciting, because you really wanted something to happen with them. And episode 6, One-Eyed Jacks. I'm a huge fan of One-Eyed Jacks. I love all the scenes that happen there. Maddie, pretending to be Laura is all, the doppelganger aspect of it. Playing with that is really exciting. This is really tough, but at the end of the day, they're both great episodes. I'm going to say, what's Cooper in an FBI jacket versus Cooper in a tuxedo? I'm gonna have to say tuxedo. Kyle MacLachlan looks like Cary Grant. It's pretty nice. So I'm gonna have to say episode 6, but that's a tough call.
All right, Francine, thank you so much. And Ben, we're going to you next.
Well, Francine, you tricked me because I thought you were spending so much time on episode 5. I thought it was episode 5. For me, it's episode 5. It's I really love the idea of the men in the woods and the way they're framed, and they all you see all of them together. And there is that carrying of the music. It starts with, like Joel said, Bobby crying and finally feeling free, and you see the birds in the sky and the music. And then they get to Jock's cabin, and there's always music in the air, and just the way that feeling of it, and so good. And it is hard to believe that it was just Mark Frost who wrote this, because there's Log Lady saying oh, close your eyes and you'll burst into flames. And to me that feels so Lynchian, and there's things that happen that's wow, this is all Mark Frost. But to me it was just so good. I just love the whole Men in the Woods, and you kind of get that again in season 3 where they've kind of gone into the woods with Jack's rabbit and stuff. But I just love that episode.
Wow, Ben, bringing it up for episode 5.
John, you have a chance to tie this up.
Yeah, John, where are you going with this?
This is the moment you guys have been waiting for. I want to tell you that before we started, I didn't know which one I was going to pick. And I did pick one before you got to this round. I had one, so I haven't changed my mind. Because I thought these were really equal of all the matchups here. These two to me seem to be the most equal. It's very, very hard. I suppose tomorrow, if you ask me, I might pick a different one. But you're going to get your tie because I'm going to pick 5.
Wow.
And I guess there's a couple of things, and I think there may be emotional things, really, in a way, that you don't get a lot of in Twin Peaks. I think, obviously, the Log Lady sequence is fantastic, and I love it, and for all the reasons Ben said, and the dialogue, and, I've always been curious as to what she meant when she said you're 2 days late. I still don't know. What would have happened if they had come earlier? Would things have gone a different way? But at the very beginning, when Jacoby basically just breaks Bobby down right away, and Bobby starts to cry, all of a sudden the characters are so rich and so real and alive. Bobby is you suddenly find out Bobby isn't just the stereotype. He's something else entirely. But I think that one of the scenes that's the most moving for me is Audrey crying when she's watching them dance on the dance floor at the end, and she cries. She's been laughing just a few minutes ago, and she watches Catherine slap Ben across the face. She thinks that's funny. But then when she sees Leland dancing and them going out there, she starts to cry. And for me, that Audrey is the Audrey we finally see again. She goes away for the rest of the show until season 3, in my mind. This Audrey that is so emotionally distraught and conflicted and uncertain of herself and in need of help goes away, and she becomes a different kind of character after this. But until season 3, I think the Audrey we see in season 3 where she kind of breaks down and talks about, I don't know who I am anymore, reminded me of this episode. So I could go on, and all the things people said about 6, I totally agree with, and I think 6 is a fantastic episode. I think if I one possible caveat on 6 is that it's really part 1 of a 2-part story. It really just sort of is again, it's really not to detract from it in any way, but it really needs part 7, I think. Whereas I think episode 5. I think it kind of sits on its own a little more, but I could give you some other reasons. But the Audrey thing stands out to me. So episode 5.
Well,
and there you go, Bryon. What are you going to do now?
Man, I was hoping this would not happen, but just because recently I've been reviewing all of these. 5. I will go with 5.
Oh, no, what have I done?
If you had made your case, Joel, maybe you would have swayed Bryon.
You would not have swayed me. 5. Let me say 5 because my favorite part of that episode is the Bookhouse Boys going into the woods and meeting the Log Lady, and the way it was filmed is very like you're watching a movie in the theater. The way it's framed up with the 4 of them or the 3 of them lining up with their heads peeking out, it's just so awesome. I love that shot. I love that whole scene. That scene's an amazing scene. It's that outweighs everything in episode 6, and I just really enjoy that a lot. And I wanted to see more of the Bookhouse Boys. I really love those guys together. So I get to break the tie, and I'm going to go with 5, and 5 moves on.
I'll just say for 6.
Yeah.
I didn't make a case for it. It is the Audrey episode of the entire season, I think, bar none. I mean, she does have some amazing moments in 5, but 6, you've got the cherry stem. You have her hiding in the closet and smoking. You have, when she's slipping Cooper the note, going out, and just like, I think I'm even forgetting one of her big scenes in there. She's just like, she dominates that episode. And you've got the Harley Payton speech of, I'm going to tell you a little secret, give yourself a present.
Yes.
And the Maddie disguised as Laura talking about, like, pound for pound, episode 6. Like, if I was to make a list of my favorite non-Lynch episodes of the entire series, I feel like 50% of them of the top like 10 would be from this episode.
Yeah.
So,
Joel, you could have.
I know,
there is
I
great-
know. What have I done?
Great dialogue in 6.
I think if we all argued longer and longer, we could change each other's mind. Because, I mean, honestly, 6, as I said before, I mean, they're very, for me, they're very hard to choose. And Joel picks up, the Audrey scenes in 6. The scene where she's in the closet smoking and she's laughing at what they're saying outside is a fantastic Audrey scene. And of course, there's the cherry stem scene, which that goes down in history. Everyone remembers that. So I don't want to, I hate kind of being forced to choose between two episodes because I'm not in any way, saying 6 is inferior.
Yeah.
I just emotionally, I found 5 stuck with me, but anyway.
Yeah.
Sorry to
Well,
jump
and
in there.
also, episode 5, we get the follow-up to that in this, because that's the Audrey scene I was forgetting, is the scene with Cooper sitting on the bed, kind of talking her down.
Yeah.
Like wanting to sleep with him, which is such a great scene, too.
Yep.
So, there's so much good. And I just want to also shout out Kel Dishnell's sound design. For some reason, that scene where Shelley is crying to Bobby and you hear like the plastic rustling in the background has always stuck with me. It's just this great, like it makes it feel like you're out there on location.
Yeah, you're right.
On stage. And beautiful colors in that episode. We don't get much blue in Twin Peaks, but we get a lot of it with Jacoby and his Hawaiian enclave. And there's just it's beautifully lit, beautiful colors, candy-colored episode. So farewell, episode 6.
It doesn't get any bluer. All right.
About time you got here. They move so slowly when they're not afraid. Come on, then. My log does not judge. I've got tea. I've got cookies. No cake.
Well, that's very kind of you, ma'am, but I don't believe that... What kind of cookies?
Sugar. The owls won't see us in here.
That happened, so we had our first tie. We now move on to round 2. Season 1, episode 4, which is Cooper and Truman track down the one-armed man. Audrey begins her own investigation, yada, yada, yada. Up against season 2, episode 2, Dale does the rock throwing with the police department, and we actually see the Red Room. So we're going to start off with Ben on this one. Episode 2 versus episode 4.
It's got to be episode 2. David Lynch. I mean, the rock throwing, the dream. It's the best.
And Francine, we're going to you.
Yeah, short answer, 2.
All right. I feel like I know where this is going. And John?
Episode 6.
He brought it back in.
You brought it back in.
Of course, it's 2.
Of course.
Without a doubt.
And Joel?
Short and sweet.
Do we have to, what would you say?
I mean, it's clearly episode 2.
Gotcha.
I think in saying goodbye to episode 4, I'll just say the one, and I don't even know if you can make the comparison point, but the one thing that it really has going that 2 isn't as interested in is I think that like late season push where everybody's on an investigation and the story's humming along week to week. But that's sort of, episode 2 is just a triumph of like, of Lynch on TV, I think. And it's very wild at heart. To me, it's like the most wild at heart of his episodes because he made it right after he shot Wild at Heart. He came back and shot this one out of sequence. And you got the zany Jerry stuff. You got the Bordello, One-Eyed Jacks with its very sort of New Orleans Wild at Heart feel. There's a sort of a wackiness to it with the Nadine and, the throwing the rocks at the bottles. I think it captures a tone of Lynch that even though it's the most archetypal Twin Peaks episode, we never see before or after from him in Twin Peaks. I think the pilot is much more kind of somber and off-kilter in a subtle way, and then his later episodes get really surreal. This just kind of gets that moment in like the early 90s where he was kind of in a hit the road and dance to Elvis mood.
All right, we're moving on. We are going the pilot. Laura's dead. Cooper comes to town. Up against episode 5. The boys meet the log lady in the cabin in the woods. Audrey gets her job at the Horns department store. Shelley shoots Leo. You know the rest. We're going to start off with Joel Bacco in this one.
I've got to go with the pilot, although I got a lot of affection for episode 5. I hope somebody picks episode 5 just to make it interesting. And since we spent so much time choosing that one, to see it go down in a unanimous vote against the pilot would be kind of anticlimactic.
All right, John.
Sorry to disappoint you, Joel, but it's the pilot. It's the pilot. Again, I think we're going to talk about the pilot again. So, it's just, I think it's a perfect piece of cinema. So, we'll talk more about it soon.
We definitely will.
Mm-hmm.
Francine?
Listen, if you want to talk about episode 5 a little bit longer, we can. And actually, I will say this. I've seen the pilot episode about 1 million times. I've lost count. And right now, today, if I was going to put on one episode to rewatch, it would be episode 5 because it's a beautiful episode. There are a lot of like little things that got, I guess, I don't know how to explain it, got kind of tucked away in my memory. But it's a beautiful episode. It's really enjoyable to watch. But I do have to say the pilot because it's iconic and it's the one in my mind.
Wow, I thought you were going to go the other way, Francine. You were like,
she's good. She's really good at tricking us.
Trying to fake you out a little bit.
Yeah, I like that.
Give Joel a little bit of hope too.
Ben?
Well, mine doesn't matter.
I know, but what would you pick?
I would, of course, pick the pilot.
All right, yeah. I know.
Lucy, this is Pete Martell. Lucy, put Harry on the horn.
Sheriff, it's Pete Martell up at the mill. I'm going to transfer it to the phone on the table by the red chair. The red chair against the wall. The little table with the lamp on it. The lamp that we moved from the corner. The black phone, not the brown phone.
Morning, Pete. Harry.
She's dead. Wrapped in plastic.
Now, it's interesting, just before we move on here, it's interesting how this played out because both these episodes, you guys unanimously picked it. Like, the episode 2 and the pilot, you all agreed on it. And these are the only 2 episodes you all agreed on. So this is why it's going to be very interesting now.
Oh, man.
One other interesting note as I'm just looking at your paper here. Episode 7 has the highest IMDb rating.
Right.
Every one of these. So
I'm
not sure who's watching Twin Peaks, but anyway.
Yeah, episode 7 does have a 9.1 rating, which is interesting.
Time it was not popular. I mean, a lot of people liked it, but it was controversial, right? More than any of the other episodes.
The pilot?
Episode 7.
No, the season 1 finale. Because they didn't reveal the killer and everything.
Oh, yeah, there was...
Cooper gets shot.
Well, I think a lot of people were expecting it to be revealed or something significant to be revealed, at least in that episode 7, and it was nothing. It was just, it's just one giant cliffhanger. Just cut the film in half and said, there. That's all you're going to get. So I think there were some people who were frustrated.
So we're gonna end the show the way we started it off. Francine, we're starting with you.
This is really tough again because I would say that these are 2 of the most iconic episodes of the whole show. They're both incredibly important. I think obviously the pilot is our introduction to Twin Peaks. It's Cooper's introduction to Twin Peaks, and we find out about Laura, but episode 2 is really when we start finding about what this place really is and probably what has to do more with, future things, including Fire Walk with Me and The Return. I can't believe I'm saying that. I was going to say the pilot, but I think I might be, now that I'm really thinking about it, it might be episode 2.
I like that answer, Francine.
You don't have any opinion on this.
This is not a political debate. I can weigh in. We're moving on
But
to.
what if this is tied then?
Oh, we don't know. We're moving on to John.
Okay. I got to say, before we started this, I thought for sure I knew what the winner was going to be. Now I'm not so sure. But when we do know the winner, I want to make another final comment about something about these two episodes, but I'm going to wait on that. Everyone knows this, I think, from hearing me in other places, but the pilot is my choice for sure. I picked the pilot because I think it's absolutely perfect, and this is my. Don't get me wrong, I love episode 2, and as I said when we were going through that first round, episode 2 was the episode that made me the Twin Peaks fan that I am. So you would think I would choose it, but I use the desert island scenario. If I had to take one episode, one chapter of Twin Peaks with me to a desert island, what would it be? And it would be the pilot. I just think it's perfect in every single way. I love it. I know it doesn't get into the deeper story. I know it doesn't even get into any kind of supernatural stuff. It's where it all really begins. I'm going to save this comment for later, but I think it's perfection. So I choose the pilot.
All right, John. Thank you for that. Joel Bacco.
All right. So no matter what I say, Ben and possibly then you are going to be the deciding votes, which seems appropriate.
Maybe.
So which way am I going to tip it? I'll say this so as I said, I saw episode 1 and I actually also saw episode 2 before the pilot. And after I saw episode 2 in the dream sequence, I said, okay, I'm going to stop this series till I can see it properly because that was amazing and I want to watch this the right way. So I waited a couple years for the gold box. Fortunately, I didn't have to wait that long.
Wow, that is dedication.
I know. Well, now it seems crazy because I watched Twin Peaks so much, but at the time it's just like, oh, I'm to other movies and TVs. So it's just like, but anyways, so the pilot, when I finally saw it, I admired it a lot. I think it's definitely the most perfectly executed piece of Twin Peaks. It just, from beginning to end, and I think that's in some ways as much Frost as Lynch. There's just a beautiful sense of like a stone being thrown in the water and the ripples going out. We see Laura unwrapped, then we go a little further to her family, then we go a little further to her friends, and then the town, and it's just beautifully executed that first half hour. And then Cooper comes in and it brings a whole new flavor to the show. And to me now, I think the most interesting thing about the pilot that I love to think about is it almost exists in this alternate universe where you can imagine it ending and just ending like that. Forget the European ending for a minute. And we never know who killed Laura. And all we're left with is this lonely town out in the woods, the fog rolling in. And it could be anything could have happened and we'll never know. And there's this whole mysterious other side of the town and this other something out there that we can't quite touch and reach. And it's just, and you can see why Lynch is in love with that idea. Now, that said, when I put in episode 2 after episode 1, I'd liked that Bob scene, but I still wasn't totally sold on the show. And when it opened with the shot of the Horn family sitting around the table, and just you could hear the scratching of the silverware on the plates, this high angle shot, wide lens, beautifully framed. Nobody says a word for 2 minutes. And way before David Lynch popped up, directed by David Lynch, I had been thinking in the previous episode, well, gee, maybe he just produced this show. Maybe he was like I didn't know anything about it. I didn't think they were going to solve the murder even. And I thought maybe he was just like a creative consultant or something. But when this scene happened, I said, this was directed by David Lynch. And his credit popped up, and I was just sold from that point on in this episode. To me, this is the crown jewel of season 1. It's where so many things that haven't quite kicked in yet in the pilot come in. And if I admire the pilot, have a sort of cerebral admiration, this is totally visceral for me. This is like just intoxicating. So episode 2.
Wow. You're making me I'm getting nervous here. I'm getting real nervous.
I feel like this is like a rematch because we had we did the Lost Highway one, and it was Joel, and then I'm the one.
I'm getting nervous.
If you don't know what to say, I feel like I have to add at least one more thing.
Add one more thing.
I feel like again, I was going to pick the pilot, and it is a beautiful, perfect episode, and it's wonderful. But the more I think about it, episode 2 literally changed people's lives. It changed the way we view time and space and the afterlife, and also possibly people's sexuality with Audrey's dance. That was, even though the music is not rock and roll, that was a very rock and roll moment.
Yeah.
It was pretty life-changing for a lot of people. So I feel even stronger about episode 2.
All right, Ben. They made their cases. Where are you going with this?
Well, I think coming into to do the show today, I said, it seems like the pilot, it was always, I can remember everything about it. I mean, there's every beat. It's just so well made. But my love is episode 2. My love, I mean, like, if I think about Twin Peaks, I think of the Red Room. I think about the mystery, and I mean, so that's where my heart is. I mean, the pilot's really good, but it doesn't have those elements that I fell in love with Twin Peaks, and it was that Red Room, and Joel said it best about the whole idea of how David Lynch shot that. I loved going into that, and the horns just eating, and you're just waiting and waiting, and it's just like they don't do that on television, and to me that was like so brilliant. So I mean, for me it has to be. I can't believe it's 2 because I thought it was going to be the pilot, but it's got to be episode 2.
Harry, it's Cooper. Meet me for breakfast, 7 a.m. the hotel lobby. I know who killed Laura Palmer. No, it can wait till morning.
I'm the only one who picked the pilot.
Yeah, the
right?
outlier here.
Yeah.
John.
I will say, I was going to say this earlier. I didn't want to sway anybody, but it is hard to divorce the dream sequence. I know it's in episode 2, but it was shot way, way earlier. I know it's not part of the pilot, and I don't consider it part of the pilot. I wouldn't use that as, extra argument to pick the pilot, because it's not. But we talk about the fact that it was shot out of order, and that episode 2 was shot much, much later, but that last 15 minutes was in fact shot much, much earlier. And so there is still that kind of Lynchian sensibility, before the Wild at Heart stuff, I guess, which is what Joel was saying earlier. And obviously you guys picked, I can't argue with it, and I love to. I absolutely love to. What stands out in the pilot, you picked a couple of things in 2, but when the girl screams and runs through the courtyard in the pilot, Lynch reused that again in the opening of season 3.
Wow.
And that to me is Laura Palmer right there. We don't even know who that girl was. We don't know if she even was reacting to Laura Palmer's death. But I think Craig and I wrote in Wrapped in Plastic a long time ago, it was almost as if Laura's death became known before it was announced. And getting away from the sort of Red Room supernatural stuff, which I, again, totally agree. And as I said, it was the thing that turned me into the fan I am. The essence of that whole importance of Laura Palmer is there in the first 2 minutes of the pilot. You see it when Sarah Palmer is screaming in the phone even before she knows what's happening. So those are my. I'm not trying to sway anybody or change your minds, but those are the things that still stay with me, and it's why I think I could watch the pilot without ever watching anything else again. Just the pilot, and I'd still be kind of like, yeah, okay, I've got Twin Peaks. So anyway, that's my final, as the only voter on the pilot.
It was so well made.
Final statement.
Well stated.
The pilot is so well made, and I can probably almost like remember everything that happens in that. And for me, sometimes there's so much grief in that first episode, in that pilot and stuff. Like you have, and that sometimes that's harder. I think that I'm older sometimes to see. The mom is grieving, and the father's grieving, and the school is grieving. Everybody's grieving, and it's like, I don't know. It's heavy in some ways, and it's painful. You have the principal crying. I mean, everybody is in pain, and Andy's crying. I mean, that's kind of almost comical, but it's. I think sometimes it's harder to go back to that to say like, okay, I'm going to witness this whole town relive this horror of their town. So, I mean, that's what made it good too. I mean, it was incredible acting by everybody. But I also thought Cooper is a little different in the pilot. Like he's a little
definitely is, without a doubt.
More stern.
A little more stern.
Yeah.
And like, there's something I love about Cooper in 2 where, he's a little more sillier. Like you. Or maybe I even just like the way Harry and him play off. It's like, you really got this from a dream? And he's like, yes.
And he pinches his nose.
Yeah. Oh, that's in the pilot. That's true. That was. I always
No,
wondered.
that's in episode 2.
Is it?
I think that's
it is.
It's when Albert comes in.
Oh, you're right.
When they're looking at evidence.
I always wondered if that was improv, because it feels so much more like Kyle might have done. Just go honk.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, don't forget too. If you want a little humor, you got that dancing kid in the school hallway.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
And you got Bobby. Bobby's dancing too. His Bobby's dancing backwards or whatever.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. We have our winner of Season 1 Madness, Episode 2, which I think everybody going into this was thinking, it's going to be the pilot.
I did.
And
I thought so too.
I did.
Yeah.
Without a doubt, I did. Yeah.
But I think it's because all these episodes are great. I mean, this was a tough one. This was a very hard one to do. And I know Ben was like, this is going to be easy. And I'm like, I
said, we're going to be on for 10 minutes. We're all going to be bam, 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 we're done.
Yeah, I think Season 2 is going to be a little bit more easier to cut the fat. But there's no fat here. I don't think it's Season 1. No. It's all yummy steak. And it's so good. Any final thoughts, guys? I thank you for this very tough one.
I hope you guys have me back, and I hope you have me back like on a Wild at Heart episode or in something where I don't have to choose things.
Oh, yes. Well,
I'm the opposite. I want to choose between like Ben in a Civil War costume and like Evelyn March, just like the most ridiculous choices.
He wants Season 2.
Joel, you'll be our constant through all this, I think. You'll be part of Madness Season 2 and probably Season 3, if you're up for that.
Season 3, that's a whole other ball game.
Yeah. We're going to go through it all. So we have 2 more seasons to do. So it's going to be very interesting.
And then Mark Frost's films next.
Yes.
I just watched a bunch of them, so I'll be on.
Fantastic Four? Or
Oh, no.
I guess film/TV movies and episodes.
Okay.
And books.
So before we go, I guess we can go around the horn one last time. Let everybody know what you're doing, your social media, what's happened with you, and we'll start off the way we began yet again. Francine.
Yes, I'm Francine the Lucid Dream. You can find me on Instagram, Francine_Dream, or the Pink Room Burlesque. And that's also, the website is thepinkroomburlesque.com, and my website's francinedream.com. You can find out all about our shows, and hopefully we'll have something fun this fall in New York City.
Awesome. And you guys just did a small little, I don't want to call it a tour, but you guys just went out and did a bunch of stuff.
Yeah,
Wild at Heart.
We actually... we did a Wild at Heart show at Bedlam almost a month ago, which was amazing. It was so much fun, and it was right in the middle of a blackout, and people still showed up, so that was pretty amazing. We were not blacked out, but the trains were down, so we were very happy that people showed up. And we were just in Dallas before that. We were at the church doing a Twin Peaks event there for a birthday party, so... Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and we were doing a lot of shows. Also, we collaborated with Fuck You Tammy, which if you don't know them, you should know them. They're a David Lynch, Angelo Badalamenti cover band based in New York City, and they're fantastic.
Awesome.
We'll definitely check that out.
Is Wild at Heart the film, like focused on a specific film event that you've done, or have you done other ones that are just centered on one film?
We actually, in the early days of the Pink Room Burlesque, we every month, the first 2 shows were specifically Twin Peaks. Then we did a Blue Velvet show. We did a Mulholland Drive show, and we were doing monthly shows back then. I was a very young and new producer and had lots of energy and came up with new acts every month. And it was a lot of work, but it really, really fun. Now it's mostly Twin Peaks, but I love incorporating other things in there, either doing like just a general David Lynch night, which could be, anything. We've had like Eraserhead numbers, Lady in the Radiator, etc. But yeah, in the future, I would love to do more specific theme shows. We've done Mulholland Drive a couple times, Wilder Heart a couple times. So yeah, probably Blue Velvet next, maybe.
Ooh.
Blue Velvet 2, I should say.
This is a random question. Have you ever had a Dune or particularly a straight story character in there?
We actually did 2 Dune shows.
Okay.
The first one I did kind of as a joke. I wasn't sure if anyone was going to come. There are a lot of Dune fans up there, and it's not necessarily the regular David Lynch audience. They're just people who are fans of Dune, both the books and the movie. And it was such a hit. It was really a lot of fun. We had lots of incredible acts in the show, and people came out in droves. So we did that a second time. That's another one I would love to revisit because it was a great show. There's a lot of things to burlesque in that movie.
Oh, for sure.
The spice will definitely flow again.
No straight story characters, you said, right?
We did have a little cameo in a David Lynch movie on a lawnmower, but I always joke that if I ever did a straight story burlesque act, it would be a 2-hour long performance art burlesque act where I just do a really slow striptease on a lawnmower.
Yes, I think it'd be awesome.
Show.
That would be really cool. All right, so John, what's going on with you?
I am working with Scott Ryan on the Blue Rose magazine, and we just finished issue, I guess it's issue 11. I get the numbers mixed up because we're kind of doing different issues at the same time, but that's going to be what Scott has called the Men of Lynch issue, and that's going to the press really, really soon. It's all done. Everything's done. We got a couple of good interviews in there. I interviewed Dana Ashbrook it's been about a month and a half ago now. We've got we got a bunch of good stuff in there that's coming out. We've got plans for the issue after that, and some more in the works with Blue Rose. And I'm working on something else, but I'm not going to talk about it too much right now, but you guys will be the first to know.
All right.
Awesome.
Come on the show. Talk about it when you're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah, and and if anyone wants to follow me, I'm typically just on Twitter, which is at Thornwhip, THORNEWIP.
Awesome. Thank you, John, for joining us today. And Joel Bacco, what are you up to?
I'm slowly making my way toward more Journey Through Twin Peaks videos. Hopefully, maybe in the fall. We'll see. I've been sort of keeping track of that on Twitter, my progress through various projects I got to complete. And on Patreon, I actually just today that we're recording this, unveiled the first of my the Lost in Twin Peaks podcast I've been doing, where I go super in depth on each episode, sometimes like 3 hours on each episode. I just opened the first one up to the $1 a month patron. So usually it's for the second tier, but there's going to be like a 6-month lag. And then so today it was the Missing Pieces episode, which was the first one I did. And my site, when this comes out on hopefully August 5th, is going to be a major redesign. It's been going lostinthemovies.com. It's been going for 11 years. And this is definitely going to be the most radical redesign it's seen. So a whole new way of looking up stuff on there, lots of Twin Peaks work. And that'll be fun. And as I think Ben was saying, I just finished covering the Veronica Mars new season on Hulu. So if you like that, check it out on there. And also on Twitter.
Awesome. Do you consider yourself a marshmallow?
I guess I do now, because I've seen I wrote up every episode and kind of made my way through all the seasons. So I enjoyed it. It was, I think, I like shows that have a strong sense of place, obviously like Twin Peaks. I think the community of Neptune, to me, is one of the most interesting things about that show. And I wrote about it a little in my coverage of the season finale. At the end, I kind of reflect on the town and the social divisions in it and kind of what that says about our political moment and all this stuff. So it really, beyond just kind of being a fun mystery show or whatever, it gives you some other things to grapple with.
Nice. Cool. I'll check it out. And Ben, people can find us where?
Well, you can find us on Twitter at Twin Peaks Unwrapped, and you can find them on Facebook at Twin Peaks Unwrapped. And where else? We're everywhere else. Where are we? We're on YouTube. We're
subscribe to us on YouTube. Give us a 5-star review on iTunes. Subscribe on Google Play or on Spotify. And if you got angry emails, you can send them to twinpeaksunwrapped@gmail.com. We'll be sure not to read them and totally ignore them. And with that being said, we'll see everybody in 2 weeks. Thank you guys for being on.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you so much. So there's a lot of Twin Peaks fans here, I think. So this is a deep cut. you.